places in all sorts of different cities.
Now I'm just messing with you. Hey, welcome back to A2A Media. Hey, so welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm gonna try not to be so close up on the mic. Pet peeves. I realized that when I look at myself on YouTube, I tend to hit this like that. For example, I tend to be doing all. I'm gonna try to chill out. I had to turn my gain up on this just a bit. Turn that, try to make it match so I can keep it just a little away from me so you can still hear me, right? Okay. All right. So, anyways, welcome y'all. This is the episode where we're going to be talking about the book Artemis by Andy Weir. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel. Like the channel, comment on it. Let's see what else. Donate. I do have the donate button underneath. Buy me a coffee. That's where you can actually donate. You can have a continuous donation. I don't have memberships yet. I am working on it. I'm working on my own Discord channel. I did have one when if you, for whatever reason, if you actually was like the first 5 subscribers, you would have saw I had a Discord link on my bio. I am working on getting one there so I can have different genres of fantasy and sci-fi, romance, mystery, thriller, history. I am working on a Discord channel with all of those. So bear with me with that. So anyways, enough of my rambling. Hey, I have something special for you all. So anyways, with this going in, Artemis. One hell of a book. Now, there is something that I did say. I have to give you this caveat before I start to dig into it, right? I did say, like you see here, if it's a spoiler, then shame on you. But outside of that, because I don't, by the way, this channel, we don't really care about spoilers. I'm going to just be honest with you. So, I've decided to change my mind on that. I'm not going to give out spoilers. I'm not, because I realize the whole purpose, it'll be a contradiction. The whole purpose of this channel is to be able to encourage you all to read, to not spend all of your time either watching movies, scrolling through, well, this is a social media, so I do want you to scroll through this social media. But I don't want you to be, get TikTok brain rot, all of the other stuff. I don't want you to have any of that. Instead, I want to give you just enough, regardless of how big the book is, right? I want to give you just enough to where you're interested to see how it ends and the overall detailed plot, the so on and so forth. Read it for yourself, and then we can dialogue on the chats that I have, which is why, like I said, I'm working on the Discord. So anyways, I'm not going to deal with the entire book. I've read the book. I'm not going to deal with the entire book as you would see on other channels. They'll say, oh, without spoilers, and then give you a spoiler. Anyways. So we're going to deal with Artemis as well. We're going to wind up digging into something that I saw from Star Talk a while ago. Like I said, I was going to do a reaction video to that, so that's about 6 minutes. So without further ado, I have images for y'all, everything up ready for y'all. So let's go ahead and roll. I have notes, so let's go ahead and dig in. Now, Artemis by Andy Weir. So this book, as you can see, this book is actually based, like if you saw the thumbnail, then you saw that the thumbnail actually mentioned how this is, I got to put it up on my side. All right, so how Artemis was never about space, it was about control, right? So the whole purpose of the book, without giving any spoilers, I take my word back on that. I'm not above correction. Like I had on my other video, somebody corrected me about the Andy Weir thing, and it was actually by a different author. That was correct. I had that. He's right. It was by a different author. I was looking up 2 different things at the same time. I spit out Andy Weir's version. I spit out Andy Weir's book and just ran with it. I'm like, okay, put it out so I can get some content out. I should have fact checked that, so I'm sorry, but I corrected it. So Artemis was never about space. It was about control. it was, in other words, the reason why it's titled as such is because it was never about just being a moon city. The book, it was never about just being a moon city. You started off with this character called Jazz, right? Jazz Bashara. Jazz Bashara. I want to say I got her name right. I have notes here. It started off with this. I'm about to say customer. The character named Jazz Bashara. That's the main protagonist of it, right? She's around 20-something-ish years old. So it wasn't just about being in a moon city named Artemis with about 5 bubbles. Now, the bubbles, like you see on this image here, the bubbles, all of those are the different areas within the city. You have, for example, Aldrin. I had to write these down because it's the different ones, right? I had to write these down. Give me a second. So you have the Armstrong bubble, you have the Aldrin bubble, the Shepherd bubble, Bean bubble. It's more than 5. It mentioned 5 in there, but anyways, it was like talking about main bubbles. But anyways, let me get to these. Let me get to what it says. Armstrong, Aldrin, the Shepherd bubble. That's the luxury residential. The Aldrin bubble is the residential and commercial. That's where you start to see. I believe it was the arcade. They have this thing in there called the arcade that is within that bubble, right? Which is where they said, or at least Jazz, the main protagonist, actually mentioned they have some of the best views, right? So they have the Aldrin bubble. Then they have the Armstrong bubble, that's just a regular residential bubble. They have the Bean bubble, that's industrial and the farming, right? They have the Conrad bubble, that's the commercial bubble. They have the visitor center, which is where a lot of the tourists go. So usually when they come up from Earth, they go directly to the visitor center and skip the per se hood. If y'all saw my short that I just put out on YouTube, well, at the time of me posting this, it wasn't fresh, but anyways, they go straight to the visitor center. And then there's the Apollo 11 site, which that's not a bubble itself. The Apollo 11 site isn't a bubble itself, but it is somewhere where the train that goes from the bubbles out into the actual per se atmosphere, even though it's not a real atmosphere, it goes out into the actual spot to where Apollo 11 landed. And then they go through this whole tour, and they have this thing called the EVA suits, the EVA suits. So those are the suits that they actually use to be able to go and do the walks, to be able to go outside of the bubbles and then actually land. The monetary systems there is called slugs. So it's a whole atmosphere and whole world building that they're building here. Now, I will say this. I think I hit this on the lore video. Maybe I didn't. If I did, then just, let me know. They supposedly are making a movie or something to the degree with this, because Andy Weir had The Martian. He had before this. And then he had this book. He had other books. Project Hail Mary. I know about that one. I believe that one actually is in the works for sure. Project Hail Mary. I believe. Now, let me see, because I don't want to be wrong again. In me recording this, I want y'all to get all of this full swing. It's not live. It's pre-recorded, but I am having this. Excuse me if y'all hear that. I'm having this still up because I want y'all to actually get the feel for it. So, all right, Project Hail Mary. Project, can't spell, Hail Mary. Yep, by Andy Weir. So, good. Project Hail Mary, I know for a fact, is being worked on. The whole reason why I brought it up is because it's being worked on to be a show or a movie. So, that being said, he's working on those at the moment. Now, this right here is what I was told to also be getting worked on in the future, Artemis. And at the time, the name Artemis has a bit of buzz because that's also the spaceship Elon Musk is using to go up. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I believe the name of the ship is Artemis. SpaceX is the company, but I believe the ship name is Artemis. So I could be wrong on that. If so, I'll just tag it and write it out here. But I believe I saw that name for SpaceX underneath his company. So that was the main bubbles: Armstrong, Aldrin, Shepherd, Bean, Conrad. There's the visitor center, and then there's the Apollo 11 site. Right? All right, so the main characters that you're going to wind up finding inside of the book. Again, no spoilers, I promise. I'm going to just touch on the first couple of chapters, and a lot of the books that I do touch on, I'm probably going to touch on the first couple of chapters. Even though I read the whole thing, I can leave the rest of it for maybe some more deep dives later on down the road. Save me some content for down the road. But I'm going to give you just enough to intrigue you, hopefully, to wind up reading it yourself, and then that could be some dialogue that we can have together. We can actually build per se a relationship, audience, author, audience, and podcaster. We can have a relationship that way, and then talk about the book in that manner. And then if y'all want even more of my insight on it, then I have more. I have no problem doing that, because I read it for you to be able to dish it out to y'all. So, anyways, the main protagonist character is Jasmine Bashara. That's the main protagonist. And they do give races in here. So she would be Arabian, right? She'd be Saudi Arabian. She's at least about 20-something. I have notes here. She's at least about 20-something. She's a bit sarcastic when you start to hear her. She's kind of a freak. I'm not talking about weird. She's kind of a freak. I forget the name of the woman. I forget her name. But they had some woman that actually looked at her like she was she had this boyfriend named Tyler, and I think it was Tyler's mother, or somebody related to Tyler. I forget. That was the part that I forgot for sure. But anyways, looked at her like she was a whore. In other words, because her body has been passed around, not like a prostitute, but she just what women today would call, I'm living my best life, in other words, right? That's what she was doing. She was struggling. She was always trying to find some work to get slugs, which is that's the monetary value, the currency that you find within the book Artemis. So you had Dale Shapiro. That's a wealthy businessman. He owned a welding company. And it was a local aluminum. Aluminum was big. Aluminum is the main thing in the book. The aluminum industry is the main thing in the book, because it's a heist book. But that right there is the main piece to where the story really ties in, the aluminum. So everything as it starts to mention about the industry and what it used to harvest such things to be able to create oxygen is what the main book surrounded around. Right? So he offered Jazz a high-paying, dangerous sabotage job. Well, there was Dale. Trond, he was a rich lunar businessman. Political. He had a lot of political ambitions. He wanted control over Artemis aluminum production, and he was also the antagonist. Right? Now, Trond Landvik. He was the one where you start to read in about chapter 3 or chapter 4, roughly. As you start to get into it, he's going to offer Jazz a proposition to be able to destroy some harvesters. This is what a harvester looks like, right? So that way you can have some image in your head once you do read it. And she had to destroy those. Now, she wound up later on, and I want to say about chapter 7-ish, she blew up at least 3 of them. She had to blow up 4 that was underneath this company called the Sanchez Aluminum. The heist was fully underway in the aluminum industry underneath Sanchez Aluminum, and for Tron, he wanted a monopoly. But let's get into that in a second. I'm going to finish naming the characters. Jasmine Bashara, they had Dale Shapiro, Tron Landvik, Rudy Dubois. She liked Rudy because she said he looked handsome. Right, this is how he looked. She liked Rudy. She liked him. It has some explicit stuff inside this book sometimes too. He was the security. He's pretty much like the police, Rudy. Then it has Saboda. He was Ukrainian. He was the scientist that wound up giving her this strange project to use this condom. Sounds strange, right? It does. I'm giving you, this is what the book says. This is what the book says. He created this reusable condom, and he wanted her to use. He did other things. He was an eccentric social worker. I wrote this down. He was an eccentric social worker, works with life support and industrial systems, helps Jazz with technical problems, right? Very cookie cutter how I worded it. But he was the scientist that wound up helping her out with a lot of different things to be able to help her with the heist. In other words, she didn't explain that all the way to him, right? At least the portions that I'm explaining to you. He didn't knowingly help her out with the heist, but he helped her. She scratch your back, quid pro quo. Scratch my back, I scratch yours, kind of thing, right? Okay. Then there's Bob Lewis. He was an Earth-based contact, so that was Jazz smuggling client on Earth. helped to arrange some illegal shipments. And then there was Amara Basharo, which is Jazz's father. He was a welder, and they was all underneath this thing called guilds, right? So the guild, Guild, right? The guilds are all different things, are factions, almost like that. It's almost like a faction, but it was working class tiers that was within Artemis, right? Small town. It was about 2,000 people roughly. So it was they had guilds for different things. They had the Welders Guild, the Hospitality Guild. I'm gonna get that in a second. Last two, they had Lenny Landvik, which was Tron's daughter, right? And then they had the administrator Nguchi. I didn't know how to say it before. Nguchi. That was the city leader, right? All of this is based around Kenya's time zone. I said this inside of the lore video. All of this was based around Kenya's time zone. And being that it was based around Kenya's time zone means that when it was nighttime in Kenya, morning time in Kenya, evening time in Kenya, they based that time on the moon, even though if the sun was per se rising, which there was no real such thing as sunrise on the moon, they'd actually still base their time off of Kenya's because they're in space. So because the reason why they did that is because the administrator, it's sad that I'm forgetting the gender, but the administrator themselves said that, or the administrator themselves were actually from the area, right? So out of respect to the administrator and who actually set up to be able to make Artemis run and become a city, they based it off of the place or country where the administrator is from, which was Kenya. So they was like, okay, well, we're going to base the time off of Kenya. Now, it doesn't say exactly what I'm saying from the book, but being that a lot of the protagonists that comes across Jazz, which was the Arabian, comes across Jazz, was Kenyan, they based the time zone off of Kenya. That's how they actually did it. And all of it makes sense. That's some of the things that you can actually pull out, right? So, anyways, that being said, right? Industrial infrastructure that was on the planet. All of this makes sense to make mention to you, okay? I have to bring all of this out. They had the Sanchez aluminum plant. They had the life support. They had the life support systems, which the industrial infrastructure of it. The Sanchez aluminum plant is the main thing that you need to focus on within the whole thing, right? They had this thing called the farm, which was the algae facility. That's where they eat their food. They called it gunk. It was terrible stuff apparently, with some food. You know how we have food coloring? They had things that was similar to like it made food taste better, almost like we have sauce. They just put it over a certain kind of algae. It still tasted horrible, just not as horrible, but still bad. That's what they had there, right? And smelters and industrial zones, which is what they used to use in metal extractions and processing, right? Obviously they had rovers, all that other extra stuff, blah 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 blah. All right, so anyways, that being said, let me scroll down on my notes here. The main point of this thing here, the guilds. Let me mention the guilds. So they had the Porters Guild. The main protagonist, Jazz, was a porter, deliveries, right? She, being a porter, knew how to smuggle things in and out of Artemis. She always dealt with, and you see when you actually read the book, they have these excerpts that seemed almost like it was out of place, because when you first see it, you probably don't know what's going on. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But they have these excerpts about her speaking to this guy named Calvin, right? First time she started to speak to him was when he was around 9 years old. That's what I saw. He was 9 or something like that. After a while, that pays off. You'll see when you read it. So anyways, they had this thing to where they were smuggling with cigars, because based off of them being inside the moon, I mentioned this in the other video, them being on the moon, certain things that was allowed on Earth wasn't allowed up there because pressurization, I think I made that word up. I promise you, I think I did. But have certain kinds of things like fire and whatever the case is was very hazardous when it comes to the moon. Right? So they had the Porters Guild. She was that. The Welders Guild, which is what her father was a part of. She actually knew a lot about that. There's a lot of little tips and tricks that's within the book that actually I think would make a lot of sense if we had something up there now. If America had something up there now, not we, right? Because everybody that's listening to this ain't even in America. Not we. If America had something that was up there now, or China did, or whatever, who cares? there it has some tips that was up there in there, right? So there's the Welders Guild, there's the technicians, scientists, hospitality, administrators, security, which was what Rudy was in, and smelter and industrial workers. So all of these were different guilds and factions, right? Okay, so the plot was when Tron started off approaching her with a job. The job was to be able to destroy Sanchez Aluminum by destroying out their harvesting. They almost built like tanks. They have like 10 at least wheels or something like that. It didn't say 10 wheels. I just kind of created an image that actually made it look like that, but it looks like a tank, in other words. Cameras all on the outside. Destroy their harvesters so that way they can't really make the aluminum, which they wind up doing some kind of extraction, something to be able to make oxygen, whatever. So Tron wanted a monopoly. He wanted a monopoly of the moon, and all Jazz cared about was having some regular life on the moon because she'd been out there since she was 6. She didn't want to go down to Earth because she's been there since she was 6. She wanted to have all of the slugs that she can have in a bidding price, per se bidding price, the amount that Tron was to give her if she successfully did the heist, destroyed the harvesters, was 1 million slugs. Okay? It was about 1 million slugs. So, that being said, she accepted it. She wound up going out there and destroying 3 of those. The whole point of the heist was so that way she can be able to finally get that 1 million, because her whole goal was around 400,000. If she got 1 million slugs, she would have been able to live inside a shepherd's bubble, which is where Tron and others actually lived. They lived inside of the best part, the high-end part. The part that tourists see but can't really get inside of, and all the other stuff. She wanted to live in that. She wanted to be a Artemisian is what she called him, what they called him. So all of this was to be able to get money, right? The reason why I titled the video is that it wasn't about space, it was about control, is that the whole plot around this book was around being a monopoly and having Artemis be an industrial complex, while people lived inside of the industrial complex. It had nothing to do with just being a lunar city that was inspired by Star Trek. It had nothing to do with that. It wanted to be an industrial complex that was ruled and monopolized by one family, one people in particular, and then them being able to control the moon would also be able to control all of the travel that, if it extended beyond the moon, would go there. So even though that wasn't fully extended and brought out to its length like I just said it, the fact that they'd be the monopoly on the moon from the aluminum, which means if they had that, they'll be able to extend the oxygen, the different kinds of materials that they get from the moon. They'll be able to use that and then put that in other settlements that they get in the other solar systems, right? Tron wanted that. Some of this that I'm embellishing because I'm adding on to it, because if you just read between the lines and you think about how people think today, then it's not too hard, it's not too far-fetched, right? Also, I'm not going to give you the full story because I want you to read it, but I'm going to give you a little bit of it. So Tron wanted that. He wanted to give her 1 million slugs. So he bidded her 1 million slugs if she was able to complete a job against Sanchez Aluminum, because Sanchez Aluminum was the top runners. That being said, whoever controlled the aluminum controlled Artemis's growth, because when it was growing, it started off as one bubble, then it transferred into 5, 6, whatever. All of that being said, Jazz wound up running into a lot of problems. Tron, the guy that actually got her the contract to do such, he ended up being put to death. I'm not gonna tell you about who. I'm not gonna break that out, but it wound up happening. Him and his bodyguard, his Russian bodyguard. And that being said, all of that came down to the point to where now Jazz had to figure out how was she going to be able to, now that the one who's going to give her the $1 million or the 1 million slugs, the one who's going to give her the 1 million slugs, how is she going to now reconcile? And Rudy, the guy who was advocating for her to get put out of Artemis because she had this incident when she was 17 that caused a fire, caused a problem, almost hurt her dad's name, and she couldn't stand her 17-year-old self. She couldn't stand that side of her that she had to live up to, or live down per se. So she wanted to get away from that name that she had. Rudy was trying to get her out since she was a teenager. Rudy wanted Tron, but now Tron was gone because somebody got rid of him. Or I'm supposing whoever got rid of him. Obviously, I know whoever got rid of him. Realized that he had something to do with trying to be a monopoly, and that Sanchez Aluminum, three of their harvesters were destroyed. Right. So that being said, I encourage y'all to figure out what happens after. Now that the main protagonists got themselves inside of this gunk, right? Got themselves inside of this problem. Wind up going out, destroying their harvesters. All of the luxuries that she wanted her own bathroom, wanted this, wanted that. Pretty much what a lot of y'all want now, a lot of us want now, want a nice house, picket fence, whatever. Wanted all of these things. She did everything she did for money. Right? She lived her best life, if you understand what I mean when I'm saying that. She wanted a lot of money. She wanted to live the way that she wanted to live, but she wound up giving her soul up to this, in other words, shark. Gave her soul up towards this shark. He wound up dying. And then she now had to work her way through a difficult situation she done got herself in because she put her father's life at risk. This same plot of trying to monopolize industries happens here in this world here, and the same attitude that she had about the disdain for her father. She said she loved him in the book, but she also had a disdain for him as well. Didn't want to follow nothing that he said, wanted to do her own thing, all of that. The same story that's mentioned inside of here has a lot to play inside of how we actually do things here on Earth. But what I encourage y'all to do is to read more of it yourselves. There's a lot more of the plot after now the man that gave her the contract wound up perishing. There's more that happened to figure out, well, why is it that the person that was trying to get her to get kicked out of Artemis, because it's not like they had jails there. It's either you got dealt with fisticuffs, you got wound up getting beat up by Rudy and some of the other locals, or you got deported back to Earth. But if the man that contracted her died, that had the whole monopoly plan, what now is the plan that Sanchez Aluminum, still being alive as a company and flourishing, who was behind the fact that Tron, the one that was going to pay her $1 million, which was an antagonist, somewhat of a problem, who is going to wind up being the person or the people that's behind the real heist into how Jazz is going to wind up living the life that she wants to live? Who is that? I'm gonna leave that to y'all to find out. I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm gonna leave it right there. But what I will say is this. I will say this. Inside of the book, there are a lot of nuggets inside of there that I've noticed, because I like to follow different things dealing with like Star Talk. I like to deal with that kind of stuff, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example. And it's not just him. They have this other thing called Space Race. They have Engineering Today. They have a lot of different channels I like to look at about stuff that's going on within the stars, right? Primarily, the innovations that the scientists per se have. That horoscope stuff, I don't deal with that. I personally think it's all garbage. I'm a Bible believer, and the scriptures tell you not to actually do that. I don't believe in that stuff. So like I mentioned that before in another video, I don't believe in that. A lot of Christians also don't believe in it, I would hope. So anyways, I don't believe in that stuff, but I am interested in what not astrology, but what astronomers are looking at. And one of the things I realized when I was looking at what they're interested in came up as far as it goes for this space race. It was dealing with Artemis, right? Now, Andy Weir did come up with the book, but there's inspiration here. There's inspiration with the book. I want to say that this video that I'm looking at, the name of this video is by Star Talk. It's called Humans in Space with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Lauren Lyons, excuse me. It was about 2 years ago. This video in particular is why I subscribed to the channel, right? And I'm not saying that everything that they're saying here I believe in, by the way, as far as it goes for how they brought it out, right? Or the vision even. But I will say the nuances of what the people behind what they say and also who they influence, the fact that they believe it, and it influences different creativity. Is why I follow this to give you the connect. So Andy Weir, I want to say his book. So this was about 2 years ago. 2 years from now was what? 2024. Andy Weir's book, right? This book right here, Artemis release date. When did this come out? Let's see here. When did this come out? This came out in 2017. So this came out way before, or at least before this video here. So now I want to check this out. Let's see it. Let's see it. Let's see it. All right, hold on. I clicked the wrong thing. Let me see. So now 3124. All right, here we go. Let's see what we got.
Well, colony is different from colonize.
That's true.
It's true,
That's a
but
subtle
it's
thing.
still like it's too subtle.
It still carries
and-
some
That's what I'm
baggage.
talking about, colonize.
It's a word with baggage.
Right.
Yes.
So there are
Yes.
two kinds of colonies we can think of. One is like on a surface of some place,
Right.
like the moon.
Okay.
That sounded like a free-floating colony.
He wants
He wants an
like
O'Neill cylinder.
Yeah,
Right.
Ooh, O'Neill cylinder. Ooh.
Yeah.
So Gerard O'Neill, he had fantastical ideas about our future
Now
living in space. With
they're talking about
farms and-
colonizing
Yeah.
and
So
whatnot,
you said Gerard,
but
what's a
going in
Gerard
towards
cylinder?
stars.
Or the O'Neill
O'Neill
cylinder.
cylinder.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on these things, but like these sort of self-contained environments that are just in space where
Yeah.
people are living and thriving and
Yeah.
working, and
Right.
there's grass and water.
All right,
and
so
closed
all right,
ecosystem.
If you
so
saw
I'm
the
gonna
movie
pause right
Elysium.
there at 32:09. I'm saying the time so I can let myself know. Again, not live, but it's talking about how this cylinder is something that is created to where they can live, thrive, so on and so forth. So there's a vision that's out there, right? Now, Andy Weir's book came out before this, but there's a thought outside of just it being the book where people want to make things like Artemis come into play, right? They want that to be real. So Sanchez Aluminum, for example, Sanchez Aluminum, somebody tried to hijack the profit from that and take over and be a monopoly, right? The same thought process about how they try to do things here in the world, about how they try to be a monopoly and cover up a lot of different stuff to be able to have all of the money go into one pocket. If there was to be able to colonize moons, planets outside of just here, the same thought would go there. So, anyways, let's go ahead and play on from where we at.
Yeah, but hopefully without the classism, just like a little.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's true.
that would be great.
But yeah, these would be rotating. so
Elysium.
you
Yes.
have
I wonder if they have a
so
book.
So you
Maybe
have
we can
yes,
touch
and
on
you can
it.
have gravity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool.
So
Okay, so how far are we from that? 'Cause
we're
it's in-
very, 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 very far from
far.
that. Like, okay, so to the question of what do we need to do? to
Very
get
far.
there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first, in the last few years, there have been a number of new companies that have spun up in order to build commercial space stations. We currently don't have any of those, and so let's start there.
Okay.
Like, let's
So the
start.
current
So
space
a
stations
number of
are
companies to
national-
build up
Correct.
commercial
Chinese
space
and-
stations.
Yes.
Don't have any.
ISS, right,
Yes.
okay.
And NASA has already said, you know, we'd like to partner with commercial industry to do this. So they have done some sort of small awards to some companies to do some early design work on this.
So they're looking at
And so there
commercial
are companies
industries
out there that are trying to do
internationally
this, but you know what? These things cost billions of dollars a year
to
just
be
to
able to
operate.
create
And the
stations on the moon.
logistics money
Right, pay or
associated-
play.
Yes.
This is a
It's crazy, and
Yeah.
then just like
Now
one
it
of the
says, so I'm gonna
biggest
pause right
chunks
there. It
of-
says in 3310. So now it says, these things, these companies, it costs billions of dollars to operate, right? It costs billions of dollars to operate to be able to create these space stations that's up there. And then Shepherd's Bubble, that's where the billionaires that would be on Earth, that's where the billionaires lived. And then it kind of started to fill out from there. So let's go ahead and play on from there.
that cost is just in the process of getting things and people to and from it. So, launch costs needs to come down.
Right.
Additionally, you start
So
thinking
now,
about it,
pause
and you're
right
like,
there. So the biggest cost of creating the space station is to be able to bring things to and from the moon, back down to Earth, and then back up to the moon, which the heist came into jazz, knowing how to smuggle things from to and from Earth, which is when you see the in-between stories with Calvin, which I encourage y'all to look at it. When you start to see the in-between things that how Calvin and them, they start to smuggle in cigarettes and whatnot because it was illegal. But that smuggling that the porter, Jazz, was able to do wind up going into this huge heist, which after a while it turns into a bit more and whatever, but the smuggling. So going to and from, it costs a hell of a lot of, in the book, they call it slugs. It costs a hell of a lot to be able to transport that stuff back and forth, even the internet, all of that stuff, right? Okay, let's play on from there.
Launch costs needs to come down.
Right.
Additionally, you start thinking about it.
Launch
and you're
costs need to come down.
Really? Are we going to just build these massive structures with
I had
stuff
an ad
from
that came
Earth?
up, so
That's silly. So then we have to start thinking, how can we actually get materials from the moon, from asteroids? How can we assemble
or just
materials?
print them.
Bring them raw
Well, you need the
material.
raw material.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
they're
and
thinking about
assemble
printing
things in
material,
space. So there's this whole
right?
sort of field that's come
So it's
about.
cheaper to move something from an asteroid to your space
Not,
platform
not yet.
than from Earth to the platform.
The idea will be once we figure out the whole asteroid mining thing,
Right,
which
right.
is still quite a
That's-
ways away,
Right.
then that starts to make more sense for these mega structures.
Because it
And-
costs nothing to launch from an asteroid.
Talk about
Right.
asteroid
Already
mining.
out there.
right,
Right, and it's got a lot of raw materials.
a lot of raw
So
material.
just I'll get it from an asteroid. Forget Earth.
yes,
Look at
Right.
that.
yes.
Wow.
Okay.
So that would unlock like in space manufacturing using materials
what's
from
the
in
company
space.
that's trying
Yeah,
to
which
do
one?
that?
There's a few. Yeah, which one are you thinking?
The one that's
And
wants to make
they're
money
mentioning
mining
now. So
asteroids.
now,
There's
so now there's about to be a company that's trying to mine asteroids.
There's one called Carmen
Astro
Plus.
Forge.
Keep going.
There's a
Okay.
couple that no longer exist.
Maybe
Lovely people,
But-
but they
space resources.
So pause there. So now
There's
they're
plen-
talking about now companies. Astro Forge is one of the ones she just said it, trying to find ways to mine out of space. Right, that's what they're trying to do. All right, let's play on
planetary resources,
Maybe that one.
and then there was deep space industries.
planetary resources.
These were two
Okay,
that founded by wonderful humans.
These are
and
dreamers.
They were dreamers. They were just a little early, I think. And now that resurgence is coming back,
Okay.
and yeah,
All right. So again, we're in the decades, not centuries.
we are in the decades. Well, in the case of O'Neill cylinders, I don't know, man. That's one where there's a lot that needs to happen to make that.
Well,
yeah.
you know, what's going to help that along is that we're going to need them. You know, see, that's the problem. The way we're treating the planet, you know, we're going to actually need
that's-
to go
yeah.
someplace for a little while to allow Earth to
Yeah.
recover.
Or we could stop
Interesting.
messing it up.
Well, we can. I mean, listen.
Would you go to one and live there and
On an
leave
O'Neill
Earth behind?
so now
One of
talking
these
about
O'Neill cylinders.
Depends on how nice it is. If it was a two-way ticket.
Let's say
So
it's,
now,
let's
all right,
say it's
35,
the
26.
Ritz-Carlton
All right,
O'Neill
so
cylinder.
Oh, dang. And what is it
now
orbiting?
seeing if she would actually go to one and live
she's
on
getting
one.
all
She was like, oh, it
articulate.
depends on how nice it is.
Oh,
This is what
requirements.
jazz
Are we in the
is
Saturn
inside
system?
of.
Like, where are we?
Oh,
Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be beautiful.
Wouldn't it
Two-way
be beautiful? Like
tickets,
that
right?
scene
You
in
have- you can come
Interstellar.
back.
I cry whenever I see it.
So it's at the
When he gets there,
Ritz-Carlton
you're
of
just like,
O'Neill cylinders. That would be
Great
Shepherd's
oh,
Bubble
it's
in
so
Artemis.
beautiful.
Go ahead.
Oh my God.
nice.
So I'm getting all like
All
just
right.
thinking about
Getting
it.
verklempt.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's about the gist of it. So, anyways, y'all, I want to show y'all that they have the thought outside of it just being in the book is out there, and the other deeper meaning behind this channel does come from and stem from the fact that there are real reasonings behind, even though the artist comes up with these different kinds of stories per se, whether it be fantasy, thriller, mystery, whatever, and some of them are sick. But anyway, some of them, they actually have ideas about things, how to create some kind of excitement about a topic. There are ideas like that outside in the political spectrum, the scientist spectrum, whatever. There's a lot of different people that are talking about the things that people are trying to create stories about. Some positive, some negative, but those things are out there. Okay, so it's not just book reviews here. It's also, we're going to dig into the actual, nitty gritty of it, where they get the inspiration from and things like this. Even though Andy Weir's book came out before this came out, this talk isn't new. So that being said, y'all, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Y'all go ahead, subscribe to the channel. Okay, I got a lot more coming out. And next, I have no problem showing you, because on Sunday, you're going to wind up seeing this. And that's right here. Boom. By Rebecca Yarros, Fourth Wing. We're going to wind up getting into it. So if y'all have seen, by the way, if y'all have seen that I had soundscapes come out, I put a community post up on my YouTube. If y'all see I have soundscapes that did come out, that is because I put the soundscape out as to be a bit of a lore sound effects to come out to kind of give you the feel, right? To give you the feel of the book that we're talking about, give you the feel of that. And on top of that is to, maybe there might be others who actually want it, because I've created all of those. I've created those myself. I put the time in to create those myself, to be able to put it inside of these books, so that way you can kind of get the feel as to what the author possibly wanted you to feel when they was writing it. Now, I might be adding my own little flavor in that, but that's fine. That's the reason why I'm doing this in the first place. A2A Media, baby. So anyways, y'all go ahead, follow, subscribe, and, don't be no stranger. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for giving me yet another episode, of giving me your time. I pray that y'all actually are all doing well, and I want y'all to also be able to share this with your families and friends and everybody else who actually reads. And again, until the next episode, follow, like, subscribe, listen to the soundscapes. Go ahead, get inside of that mood. Fourth Wing coming up next by Rebecca Yarros whenever I get done with the book, hopefully soon. But as for that, A2A out.